Hello, and welcome to Metachemistry. This is episode 89. And for tonight's episode, we're going to have another entry in our Second Look series. Basically, this is a series where we take an oft maligned unit and kind of see why that is. We talk about, what is holding them back. We talk about some ways you can potentially get some mileage out of the profile as it stands. And then we wrap up with some hypotheticals and some, armchair game designer shenanigans to see how we would recreate the profile if we got to pick. And for tonight, we're going to be talking about the Kunai Solutions Ninja, the less scrupulous ninjas that betrayed the Japanese emperor when JSA seceded from Chuching. But before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank Mo Games, sponsor of Metachemistry, which you can find at mo-games.com. They're an online supplier for Infinity, and as part of their sponsorship of the show, any of our patrons, regardless of level, get a 10% discount code at that storefront. In addition, if you're a member of our Discord server, whether you're a patron or not, then you're entered in for a monthly raffle for a $40 coupon code at Mo Games as well. Because what's better than games? Mo Games. And tonight, to talk about the Kunai Solutions Ninja with me, I have Ian, Trevor, and myself. And just to kind of check in with everybody, how have your last, escapades in gaming been over the last week or two? Trevor, you want to start?
Yeah. It's been okay. Work has kind of caused me to not make as many game nights. So
Yeah.
trying to get into the games in when I can. You know, gotten a couple games in probably in the last maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I did,
Still
however.
experimenting with,
Oh, go ahead.
still experimenting with Torchlight, or
Um, I did one more game after my big run, and then I read John Libby's Erigard novel. And I had to break out the Caledonia for that. So very inspired to play them. So
very
been
nice.
having a lot of fun making lists. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, what about you, Ian?
Yeah, work's been kind of stupid, so I haven't gotten to do as much as I'd wanted to do. Outside of playing some Blood Bowl, Infinity's been a little light, unfortunately. And yeah, the various other things, it's been fun trying to schedule, so I have not been up to a whole lot lately.
Fair. Yeah, my week. Well, I guess 2 weeks was a little dry. I did get some games, not this past week because I was feeling sick. Unfortunately, didn't want to go out with people. And the week prior, I got a little bit of game time in. But since then, my Torchlight bundle has arrived from Mo Games. Thanks, Ruben. And I got those all built, got them modded up, taking care of some of the design elements I didn't specifically care for. And I'm pretty excited. Put some primer on those guys and see how that looks.
I am of mixed feelings on some of the S2 models getting thermoplastic pieces. It's a little weird.
Yeah, I wasn't sure why, especially because some backpacks were thermoplastic and some weren't, even though they're similar design. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I said I don't know if I care for that, but yeah, I mean, whatever. It's an experiment, it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, but the models went together pretty well, and thermoplastic, the Siocast, cleans up relatively easily if you have a sharp knife, so I didn't have too much trouble there.
Yeah.
But I cut off the crests on the rovers and trimmed the helmets to smooth those out. I gave Aleph Phalanx swords, not the new OSS swords, but the Phalanx looking swords, to the Hellblazers, so they don't have giant World of Warcraft swords. I took off the T-shirt launcher from the Prime and put an actual HMG on it, and I chopped off his WoW sword and gave him a shield that was a design that was a project from Dak with Corner Case when he was working on his Agamemnon conversion. So I used a shield from that and printed that out, and that worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got the with my Torchlight stuff also came the event pack for this season with the alternate sculpt Agamemnon, which is pretty
Nice,
cool.
yeah.
Weirdly though, they packed it with a 55mm base. So
whoops.
Yeah, I'm like, is that a mistake or because it's definitely supposed to be on 40, guys.
Right? I'm also a little sad that it's on an AVA 1 profile. Even Phalanx, it's AVA 1.
Yeah.
So well, because I kind of want it, but it's a lot. I mean, the Marut was hard to justify, especially because the general release looks better to my eye.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not likely to run 2 Maruts in a list, but I could. But the Agamemnon, I can't even if I wanted to, and that's in a price bracket where I conceivably could.
Yeah, and I it sucks though because like I wish there was some way to make it AVA 2.
Yep.
If only because it is Agamemnon. He is the Atreides, but he's not the only one. And if you go back into history and Greek mythology, he is the brother of Menelaus, and I would be like, here's Agamemnon and Menelaus come to wreck your shit.
Here you go.
But I can't do that, CB. Come on. Let me have 2.
So, as far as our main topic tonight, though, we have the Kunai Solutions Ninjas. And these guys ranked pretty high up on a survey we did a little while ago, about profiles that people didn't like and didn't really see a lot of value in. So the last time we talked on this topic, we had the Jaith Cutthroats, and that was a fun exercise. And so we thought we'd do it again with one of the near runner-ups there. And so why don't we take just a little bit of time to go over the Kunai Solutions Ninja real quick, just so that everyone's on the same page, and kind of talk about their profile to start. And Trevor, you want to go over the profile for the Kunai Ninjas?
Yeah. So the Kunai Solutions Ninja is movement 4/4, CC 22, BS 11, Fizz 12, Whip 13, Armor 1, BTS 0. It's got 1 wound. It's, of course, a Silhouette 2 unit, and it's, depending on AVA, anywhere between 1 and 2. As for skills, it's got Camouflage, Climbing Plus, Courage, Dodge plus 1 inch, Hidden Deployment, Martial Arts level 3, Mimetism -6, Stealth, Surprise Attack -3, and Terrain total. And then it's got 2 different profiles. The first one is for 0.5 SWC and 31 points. It's the 4 deployment plus 4 inches with the Shock Marksman Rifle, Pistol, and Shock CC weapon. And then the next profile at 1.5 SWC and 34 points is the multi-sniper profile with a pistol and the Shock CC weapon as well. No forward deployment plus 4.
Yeah, and so what we've got here is a ninja that seems to focus on ranged combat. It's slightly less good in CC than the standard ninja, but it shoots only as well. It just happens to have more long-range weapons. And one of the things that I like to do when we have these conversations is draw inspiration from the background of the unit to try and help inform how we might think it should look. But the background for Kunai Ninjas is pretty sparse. In fact, it's short enough that I feel comfortable just reading it here right now for the show. It says security resources is what Kunai Solutions offers. And for this, the cover company of the Takamura Ninja clan, that means espionage, thievery, assassination, and many other illegal activities for money. After all, they are one of the honorless clans who betrayed the Japanese emperor to keep working for Jixing, and also for Pan-Oceania if it pays well. So what can you expect from them? And that's the entirety of their background fluff. So there's not a lot to work with. But as far as what they have currently, what stands out to you guys in terms of things that, what makes this look like a difficult to use or kind of suboptimal profile to you guys? Why do people hate on the kunai so much? Ian, what do you think?
To me, the kunai is lackluster because of two factors. First is cost. It's a little pricey for what you're getting. And second is competition, in that in many of the places you can take it, there's another model that will do roughly an equivalent thing for cheaper.
Sure.
So it's just one of those things where it's hard to justify taking it in a lot of the places that it can be taken because of those two factors.
Yeah. And for reference, the kunai is available in Vanilla Pano, Winter Force, Vanilla Chuching, Imperial Service, White Banner, Druze, and White Company. So those are the places where you can grab Kunai Solutions Ninjas. And yeah, I feel like part of what drives up the cost is that it's sort of a multi-purpose unit. Like it has a handful of close combat skills, but not necessarily a close combat weapon to take advantage of it very well. It pays for better guns, but doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of backup after its mimetism to make it a decent gunfighter. And BS-11 on a dedicated gun platform feels pretty rough.
Yeah.
And so there's power and versatility if there's a good likelihood you will get the benefit of its subcomponents. But this is not a unit that looks like you're going to do that. You're not going to CC stuff and snipe stuff very often, I don't think. And it doesn't have another role, like it's not a specialist, for instance. It can't help with that. Even the more aggressive one, I suppose you could say, starts no more than 4 inches past your deployment line with the shock marksman rifle. And so it's pretty limited being a 4/4 move unit, even with climbing plus, which is good, to be fair. I feel like this unit wants to rely on finding vantage points and firing down from rooftops and the like. But yeah, it's a decent chunk of points to pay for a shooting unit that isn't actually that good at shooting.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, depending on where you're taking it, if you're taking it in Vanilla Pano for 2 points less, you could just take a Crocman Sniper, and it does almost exactly the same thing, but for cheaper. And if you're playing Yuching, a lot of the times you just take the Guilong, because it does many of the same things for, in that case, a fair amount cheaper, and also gets full infiltration instead, can be a specialist. So it's just, in those two factions, there are just things that do the same job for more efficiently.
Yeah. And if you want a CC style unit, a ninja is going to be notably better. I mean, sure, the ninja has, +1 pip of CC over it, which isn't particularly relevant in my mind. But it has either double action or armor piercing close combat weapons, which both are more relevant than shock. the vast majority of the time. They have true infiltration, and they're a little bit cheaper. And even then, ninjas aren't incredibly common picks unless you're getting like the Takbo killer hacker as a late specialist grab and things like that. So even their melee job, it's kind of hard to pick them over a
Yeah.
regular ninja.
Yeah, and I'm looking in Svartalfheim, and it's like, okay, they don't have specifically the, hidden deployment Mim 6 kind of guy, but you just take a Nisei, and it's going to do the job better because it's higher ballistic skill, has MSV, and better armor and survivability. And it's linkable, so you can just make it that much grosser if you want to. It's just, the model doesn't seem to have a place in most of the factions that it's in.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of pushed out, and I think that's because it doesn't have a very dedicated role.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy for a specialist to beat a generalist in a given aspect. But yeah, it's also one of those units that just seems to have the points add up. Like, if you put in everything it has, it sort of makes sense for it to cost what it does. But it's kind of an anti-synergistic unit with itself. And so theoretically, if you were buying the whole package outright, theoretically it would be cheaper because these things aren't working together. It's not like, it's really, really good at a given job. It's trying to do very different things that I think kind of drag it down a little bit. But yeah, Trevor, any other notes on the Kunai in terms of why it doesn't see a whole lot of play?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just has a lot of skill bloat. Reading off those skills, it's got 3 lines of skills on the app. And as you guys pointed out, like, it just doesn't have the stats to basically make it competitive, or the cost doesn't make it competitive either where it's found. So I think that's truly why it doesn't see a lot of play in a lot of armies that it's found in.
Yeah, I could see that. So yeah, that being said, we kind of have a decent picture of what the kunai is like and some of the places where it's found and whatnot. But let's say you're playing one of these factions, and feel free to pick, whichever ones it's available in. If someone told you, like, all right, I'm going to challenge you to make a list with, 1 or 2 or kunai or what have you, whatever the availability happens to be in a given sectorial, and you have to use it, what's the game plan for you? How would you take this unit? And if you were trying to meet that challenge, what would you do with a kunai to try and get some value out of it? Telling. Very telling. Ian, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think the only thing that it really has going for it at this point is kind of hidden deployment, just so that you can stake out an area and kind of wait for a good target of opportunity, and then either do an ARO to it, which isn't ideal, or let something get out of position, and then, especially with the shock marksman rifle, go active with it and catch them from an angle they weren't expecting because they didn't know you were there. I mean, that's really seems about the best use for it, which is, pretty common use for a hidden deployment model to begin with. I said the idea behind the ninja isn't bad. It's just not necessarily the best pick in the factions that can take it. Like, there are some factions that if it was in, it would be fantastic because it doesn't have competition for that role. But where it's at. Yeah, it's you got to kind of make a conscious decision to use it, and then I think it's best used as kind of an ambush unit to just catch people off guard and unawares because they didn't know something was there.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. Yeah. What about you, Trevor? Anything that kind of stands out? If you were to pick a spot where you can take it and you had to bring one, what would you do with a kunai? And
I
you
feel,
can pick a faction if you find it helpful for
yeah, no,
context.
I'm between two, and it's for two different reasons. I could see the Winter 4 being a good one just because they don't have a lot of, they don't have a lot of camo markers. Just being, what's the character? Uma.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So having another camo option could be nice. I think I would probably lean towards the shock marksman rifle, but I could also see the multi sniper being good and being kind of a trick option for Winter 4
Yeah.
because they don't have any parachutists, no hidden deployment. So I think you can kind of trick some people in, a gotcha arrow moment. It's not the best gotcha arrow, but I don't think they'd expect it.
Sure.
And then Drews, I kind of like him in Drews with the shock marksman rifle. I think it's another fun, I don't think people are expecting it in Drews. So it's mostly where people don't expect it, which maybe
Yeah.
every army that it's found in.
Well, and Druze is one of the factions that doesn't have something that's directly competing for it.
They have a couple good snipers, but yeah, there's nothing that's a
Yeah.
camo mark sniper, I guess.
Yeah, unless you want to take Hunzakut, I suppose.
Yeah, true.
But feels bad to sit and wait on an irregular trooper.
Yeah.
But they're also BS11. They just have lower mimetism and a much lower cost.
I'm just remembering back when Chasseurs had sniper rifles too. They were BS11 as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that getting use out of the current kunai profile, you have to be able to leverage the climbing plus. Like, that's the singular ability that I think sets it apart. I wish that it was a little bit more flexible with its deployment. Like both versions had 4 deployment plus 4 or plus 8 inches, maybe something like that, that let you get some choice out of it and find some good spots. I think that if you can leverage your Mim 6 and your surprise attack, hopefully, and just take engagements where the opponent just likely isn't able to attack you back, because I feel like the Mim 6 sniper is a tool that has been in the game for a very long time, but seems to have kind of fallen out of favor in N4. Like, you just don't see them very much anymore. And this could be a pretty reasonable profile for that, especially if you could, get it behind some things that are starting to advance up the board, or, something is theoretically safe on a rooftop, but you can just climb up the side of a neighboring roof, or, maybe a couple roofs over, and put shots down into something with the marksman rifle or something like that. I think that there's some value to be had there, but it's just so table dependent. Like, if you can't get use out of climbing plus, I feel like you're going to struggle to get value out of the kunai.
Yeah, I feel like also putting a lot of orders into moving from rooftop to rooftop potentially to try to get angles on things is order intensive.
Mm-hmm.
And for something that has a BS11, base, it's not ideal for spending a ton of orders on it. You feel better when it's BS 13, 14, 15, whatever.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
I mean, if you pick your fights and you leverage range, mimetism -6 cover, surprise attack, depending on what you're going at, you stand a pretty good chance of putting somebody on a -9 or -12 back at you. So there is that, but the BS11 does hurt a little bit.
Yep. No, I agree. And, like we were kind of talking about a little bit earlier, it's hard to justify a troop that its only job realistically is to shoot things and occasionally CC things, maybe,
Yeah.
to only have ballistic skill 11. And even in CC, like, it is perfectly fine in CC, but I wouldn't consider this exceptional in CC. And there's still plenty of stuff that can beat them out. I mean, especially if we're looking at, like Zellenkriegers or the like. One of them rolls up climbing plus on their metachemistry chart. They just charge up the side of the building and go punch the kunai. You're having a bad day with a 9-point model bearing down on you. But that's, again, a little bit exceptional of a circumstance. Not everybody can take those, and there aren't always things that can quite as easily get up to them if they have a vantage point like that. So, not always going to happen, but it can. So, that being said, we kind of have an idea of both why it's not a particularly popular profile, and there's some pretty limited use case. Now, it can come up where they can do work, but those are kind of the use cases in my mind, at least. Is you need to be somewhere where climbing plus is valuable. Otherwise, I don't think you're going to get that much mileage out of them.
Yeah.
So, that said, I'll go ahead and go first with my kind of proposed profile. I don't think it's a severe departure. And again, as I said earlier, I like to look at the background to kind of inform what a troop profile should do and kind of a general feel for it. And there's not a lot to work with, but here are some things that I might change if I got to rewrite the kunai profile. So the first thing I would do is I would take a little bit of emphasis off of its close combat. So I would knock it down to CC 21 from 22 and martial arts level 2 down from level 3. I would bump up its ballistic skill to 12 and leave the rest of the stats alone. I would swap out hidden deployment for decoy and give both profiles infiltration instead of forward deployment on the one profile. The multi-sniper, I would add +1 burst so that it can be a bit more threatening in active turn. And for the shock marksman rifle, I would give it specialist operative and decharges. 1, because it might have an interesting use for the CC at that point. And 2, it can help it for classified related things if you draw sabotage. And then I would end up dropping the points on both of those by 2 and dropping the SWC from the shock marksman rifle. I see no reason that needs to be a half SWC profile. So I think taking that off, dropping 2 points to largely from hidden deployment, since you'd then place the markers out. So then it would be a much more shooting-oriented profile that kind of has a very secondary function in CC, sort of like now. But it would have the ability to be a specialist up the field. It could potentially find some interesting nests or buildings to deploy on with infiltration that it could easily, climb up from behind or climb down a rooftop to try and find an enemy, or you're near the halfway line and you can come back towards your deployment zone edge and fire into the backs of enemy troops that are on your side of the table after their first turn or what have you. And decoy, I kind of think maybe even knocking it down to mimetism -3, potentially. I would say it would be another couple points cheaper from that if you want the ability to hide this with your other camo markers, because two MIM6 markers are pretty uncommon in the game near each other. So I could even see that potentially if you make it MIM -3 and drop another probably 3 or maybe even 4 points off of each profile. And you do some interesting stuff with that. But yeah, so and you could even find that extra -3 somewhere else potentially. Like I could potentially see it getting surprise attack -6 if it went down to MIM 3. I think that could be another interesting alternative. I would knock it down more points if that were the case instead.
Then we could have a
Maybe
second
like 1 or
model in
2.
the game with that skill.
Right, yeah, and behind the AR. So yeah, I think that might be interesting. In fact, I'm going to change that on my proposed notes. Do that. So that way it kind of blends in with your other camo markers at a -3 mimetism if you have them. And yeah, I think dropping him maybe 1 more point. So that would be 31 for the sniper and 28 for the shock marksman specialist. I think that would be pretty interesting. And it would kind of reinforce this sort of guerrilla tactics sort of fighting with it, where you want to you're encouraged to spend the extra orders to put it back into camo so that you can keep popping that surprise attack. I think that might be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about you guys? What are some ways that you think either as addendums to my proposal or other directions you guys think would be interesting? What's some fun stuff that you've come up with for our Kunai Ninja?
So, like, for me, I think a lot of the stuff that I'm looking at is, like, I want it to still feel like a ninja. So, I don't want to neuter the CC ability completely. I think that going to ballistic skill 12 is perfectly fine. But as far as the CC value, I'm fine with 22. 21's okay as well. But I think instead of martial arts level 3, dropping that to martial arts level 1 or CC attack -3. So it still has a little bit to go in the martial arts, and that does leave it a little lacking on the damage side because their fizz is so low.
Mm-hmm.
But they're already rocking only a shock CC weapon, so this is more of a defensive measure than anything, which I think is fine. But then bumps their ballistic skill up a little bit. I like the idea of full infiltration on them, as well as getting some level of specialist operative or like forward observer or something, at least on the shock marksman rifle, so we can go do something. The decharges, I think, is a great idea. Although I could take it or leave it depending on what else the kit had. Sure. I like the multi-sniper option, and what I do like is that now that, for the most part, the multi-sniper ninja isn't really available outside of, I think, JSA, this can like fulfill that role. So if you had access to both, you have your shooting ninja and you have your stabbing ninja, which would be kind of cool. And I think that, as far as some of the competition, in the places that already have it, it would give it just a little bit of a different use, which I think would end up making it a little bit more viable in those factions. And then, as well as with those proposed changes, it would probably drop the points closer to 30 instead of being up at like 34. So It is something that, is viable there. But I also think that the places it's most useful currently is in Druze, because they don't really have something competing for that slot. And I'm a big fan of things only going into factions if they thematically make sense. And I feel like thematically Ikari would hire them, like, even though they're like, they're traders, like Ikari are kind of borderline anyway, so I feel like they would maybe hire them, and as well as it would fulfill a niche in Ikari that doesn't really have anything else that does that. They don't have that
Mm-hmm.
camo sniper kind of thing going on. So I think that's a place where they would fit in really well. Yeah,
Yeah, I
White
think that'd be
Company,
cool.
they kind of have a little bit of competition. I think White Company can still take Guilongs, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so you got a lot of competition there, and in most cases, I'd just rather take the Guilong. I think it's just a more versatile profile. But said Akari could use something in that realm because that list is already fairly limited in a lot of its options. So that's kind of where I would go with
Sure.
it. Just tone down the CC, bump the BS a little bit, give it a little bit more in the advanced deployment realm, and maybe an option to take a specialist. And I think it would allow it to really kind of not necessarily shine, but to be a viable alternative to other things in the factions that can take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What about you, Trevor? What are your thoughts on the kunai? How would you revise the profile to kind of keep the spirit of it, but make it more appealing without being over the top?
I think I might take it in a slightly different direction than you guys with some minor tweaks, but maybe
Sure.
maybe in the fluff, maybe fluff influenced.
Mm-hmm.
Um, kind of looking into like this mercenary ninja and like taking money from the highest bidder. I'm gonna maybe make some weapon changes.
Sure.
So probably bump up the BS. I would likely get rid of the dodge +1 inch, and maybe bump up the movement to 6.2.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because I think if you made the marksman shock marksman profile with forward deployment +4, maybe change that to +8. Nothing too crazy, but get you pretty close. And then change the shock marksman rifle to a multi marksman rifle. I think that would kind of create something interesting, where you can either choose AP or shock. Could kind of give you some fun, maybe suppressive fire options. And then I would also add probably a DH CC weapon,
Mm-hmm.
and then a specialist operative, like you guys were saying, or some sort of specialist profile, kind of making it really interesting um, camo profile for those who don't have something in that niche, kind of like Winter Force and Drew's.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, I think that would kind of make it unique. And then maybe this is maybe too wild, but for the multi sniper profile, change that to a Feuerbach. Because I think that
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
because I think having some sort of like APDA or explosive on a hidden deployment sniper profile could be interesting. Or maybe even
that
just having that basic BS11 profile, just having that forward option would still make it
I
very.
mean, I love me a Feuerbach, and there isn't really anything that in the game that has that hidden deployment Feuerbach action going on. So I can see that'd be kind of neat.
We hire them to assassinate tanks.
Yeah. Um, honestly, like something I think that would be kind of cool, like bouncing off of that, is even like what if they went in a direction where they were kind of like the inverse of, say, a Cube Jaeger, and where like the Cube Jaeger's job is to come in and like recover the cube, and like the Cube Jaeger is another one where it's just doesn't really have a good place in the game. But if this was the inverse of that, and they were designed to like assassinate cubes and like loaded up with like EM
EM
style
weaponry.
weapons and
Mm-hmm.
things like that to like take out guys and like erase the cubes, I think that could be an interesting way to go.
Yeah.
I think that could be cool. If you were to push that profile further, what sort of EM weapons would you be considering?
I mean, obviously an EM CCW,
Mm-hmm.
which yes, it is one of the best close combat weapons in the game. That's fine, but it is that idea of having it be for EM, but no, I like maybe we see something new. And
Okay.
I'm serious. Like maybe it is a sniper rifle, but maybe the sniper rifle has it. Just regular sniper rifle, but maybe that sniper rifle has BS attack EM.
Be weird.
It
Interesting.
would be weird.
That seems incredibly powerful.
Well, but the thing is EM is non-lethal unless they choose to make it N plus EM, like they did with the CCW.
Well, how you proposed it, it would
Yeah.
include, it would be EM shock, because the standard sniper rifle
Yeah.
is shock. So it'd be EM
Okay.
shock. So it would do normal damage, killing one wound models, or, well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Killing models, skipping unconscious state, and having the EM effect.
Okay, and yeah, that would be very powerful. And again, pointed appropriately. But think about it, because like a viral sniper rifle is basically DA shock. This just happens to have the AP component on it instead, so it doesn't have any. Like, there's no equivalent in if it's like the one thing in the game, and bump the thing up to like 40 points or something like that. Like, I think that could be cool. Or maybe if you don't do that route, have it be just like an AP sniper or something, but give it like a blitzen.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was almost thinking a emitter +1 burst for like the shock marksman profile. Like something that's like a little bit different. I don't think there's a lot of emitter +1 bursts out there.
Yeah, but yeah, I like
many.
that. But yeah, go like blitzen for the sniper and emitter for the shock marksman. That'd be kind of cool too, because it gives them kind of in their range-ish band. Gives them that alternate option. But I don't know. I still like the idea of doing like this weapon has BS attack EM, because it's nothing in the game has that, and I understand that's powerful.
I don't know if it should.
I get that, but it just throwing it out there, like think it through, because that could be something that's really neat. Or I'm just gonna throw this out there: Karakuri should have vulnerability EM, and then I'll shut up about it.
I mean, yes, I agree on your point, but not its relevance to the episode.
I'm just saying, like, let's go.
Yeah.
It's the classic, you're out of line, but you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I think an EM sniper rifle would be atrocious because, damage 15 EM multi-burst on something with surprise attack and Mim 6 to hide behind. It's a good chance that that tag is forced to dodge, and then it's dodging on its poor fizz value, its poor dodge value, and then surprise attack. Like most tags are dodging on an 8.
Yeah.
And like that's and if you get hit, even your tag's probably getting turned off.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm saying it's an interesting idea. But also, if there was something that, because like we used to have rules that interacted more with cubes and stuff. It was journalist and some of that kind of stuff with and journalist level 2, and it was more like the campaign-esque side of it. But like, there's Subsidiar, which interacts with cubes, which
Sure.
I'm not saying do like Subsidiar, but what if there was something where you're like, this only a side note, or this only affects models that have cubes or something?
I mean, technically, most Concilium banned ammunition types are banned because they are somewhat likely to destroy cubes. So, like, shock, DA, explosive, T2, all of those are Concilium banned because
and flamethrowers and shotguns, just because.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think that a cube hunter, I guess Jaeger is hunter, but
yeah,
a cube assassin.
Yeah, cube assassin. Let's go.
I think that it could do that with just all my guns are Concilium banned, which I guess technically that's true of the Kunai right now, except for the pistol.
I mean,
it needs to be a viral pistol.
No. Let's make the pistol the EM weapon. Because then it's only damage 11. Come on, and you got to get real close. I actually kind of like that better. I think that's actually more awesome because yes, you put him down with the rifle, and then you get up there and you execute the cube with the EM pistol. Let's do it. I love it. Let's go.
EM grenades. How about that? We'll meet you in the middle. EM grenades on the sharp marks profile.
There you
Fine.
go. EM grenades are fun.
Yeah, that's also good.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of interesting, actually. I think viral pistols might be kind of cool to cover their short ranges and give them something a little bit more potent.
I know, if we're talking about weird weapons, maybe a K1 sniper would be kind of fun too. Like just something.
Yeah, it's not common.
Yeah.
That's true. So, looking at that these are units that are trying to do, like illegal jobs for pay, and that they are focused on thievery, espionage, and assassination. I'm curious how you guys feel that all of these anti-tank measures fit in.
Hey,
I mean,
I'm
A1
saying
is
fucking
Armor Zero.
anti-cube measures. And again, we have refined it. EM pistols, damage 11, we're good.
Oh, okay.
You gotta be within, real close.
I mean, my argument for K1 ammunition on one of the profiles is that, that's kind of assassinating a target right there for putting your armor at 0. So I think that kind of makes it interesting, and it's easy to remember. K for Kunai. So
Ooh. All right. Well, that
So,
settles it then.
am I the only one that kind of, whenever the subject of K1 comes up, I kind of like envision the weird, like, coil guns from like Eraser?
Yeah, that's not coming to mind for me.
God, I'm old. Okay. Late 90s Schwarzenegger movie, and like the bad guys develop, and it's literally like these weird like rail coil gun things, and they're just like shooting through walls, and it's awesome. They have like X-ray scopes and stuff. It was really cool, and that's
Nice.
kind of how I feel like K1 would operate. Just
I can see it.
that's why you have no armor.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see it. I think that generally fits with K1. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're trying to selectively pick off targets. So I generally think, non-explosive weapons and the like.
probably.
At least that's in my mind. I mean, as far as like the espionage and thievery, that's why I think they should at least have an option for Spec Op. Because I want them to be able to do those secret mission type things, in addition to assassinations, just them being decent at shooting stuff. But yeah, I think that there's some. I think it's safe to say that there is some wiggle room for Kunai to be adjusted to be an appealing profile, because I feel like they're not terribly far off with where they are at. They just need a little bit of a nudge here and there, and I think that they would be pretty decent. But it's hard to justify with their current costs and abilities. Like if they were, just a little better at shooting and had a little bit more threatening armaments,
I
then
mean,
I think that could do it.
I would say it's a timing issue of when they were developed, because if you look, and we talked about this before the show, the Raven Eye, or not Raven Eye, the Nightshade for 012 is a ninja kind of influence, and the fluff kind of talks about that, but it seems like that's like the Kunai 2.0. Like it got refined, it became a specialist, had more interesting profile. So
Yeah, I remember seeing the render for the Nightshade that had a sniper rifle, and I kind of wish that there was an option somewhere for that. But yeah, the Nightshades are all in close. They have deployment further up the board. They have the same CC abilities, generally speaking, except the para -6 weapon's kind of interesting on them if you just really want to lock something down.
it's very interesting.
But yeah, but they're even more expensive. Like most of the profile, or well, half the profiles are a couple points under the sniper, and half of them are even more expensive than the sniper. And these are packing shotguns and SMGs, so you're definitely paying for for those abilities, but quite a bit. But yeah, I like the nightshades. I think they're kind of interesting. They're a little expensive, but I think that they'll show up and they'll do some interesting stuff. But yeah, I agree. I think that they're kind of the direction that the kunai wish they had gone. If you also stack like another medium or long range gun on them, and that would kind of put them right there. So yeah, I think that is a pretty good rundown for the kunai, with some fun ideas to implement. Uh, in our theoretical kunai land. But before we transition to our final thoughts on the Kunai Ninja, I want to give a shout out to our patrons and say thank you very much for your support of the show. It means a lot to all of us to have that help with recurring costs and equipment and subscription software and all of those little things that add up. And so that helps tremendously keep this going. And like I've said many a times, this just goes back into the show directly. Anything that it's contributed, if you are interested, it doesn't go into our pockets. We don't pay ourselves or anything like that. This is just for making the show better and hopefully making something that you all continue to enjoy. And even if you're not able to join our Patreon, we would love to have you on our Discord, which is free and open to everyone. But we do have some benefits for our Patreon members, things like early access to episodes or final round voting in polls, access to some secret channels on the Discord, that sort of thing. But even without that, it's a great place to continue talking about Infinity, going over lists or new releases, or showing off your hobby progress, or asking for advice, either tactically or with painting or with terrain or whatever the case may be. Or if you just want to come say hi, we'd love to have you. But with that said, Ian, Trevor, final thoughts on the Kunai Solutions Ninjas. Trevor.
It's a tough profile, I think, with what the stat block is and what the skills are and the point cost, as we've discussed. But I think at the end of the day, trying it out and putting it on the table would be the best judgment of the profile. And I'm definitely inspired, I guess, now after some conversations to maybe see,
Yeah.
What if I actually did take this? So I think my biggest takeaway is, I'm going to try to force some list building and try to see if I can run a winner force or a Drew's list with it and see how it does. See if someone's caught off guard by it or, actually performs better than we thought.
There you go. Yeah, that sounds great. What about you, Ian?
I really like the models. Like, they're really good.
Yeah.
And so it makes me sad because they're just not super great anywhere you can kind of take them outside of Drew's. And so, yeah, I think that, like, with some adjustments, they could be more competitive. I really like the models and I want to use them. Every time I see them, I'm like, that's a really cool model. But then it's like, well, I can't really proxy them as a regular ninja because they don't have any weapons in in common. But
just leave the marksman rifle off the one's back. It's the cooler pose anyway.
Yeah, no, I don't care. It's really, yeah. I think they're really cool models. Well, and that's it. I'm just gonna now have to start harassing CB. Like, hey, let's do an EM pistol. Just pick a model. Just one model. EM pistol. It's now my new fixation. EM pistol.
There you go. But yeah, I wanna echo Trevor on that note, where it's very easy to look at the game and see a general piece of advice that you should take these or you shouldn't take those, or this is good or this is not good. And there is often information that helps back that up somewhat, but there's so many variables in the game that it's hard to make definitive statements in that regard. And so I agree that taking some time to just kind of experiment with things and try things that kind of defy the conventional wisdom, maybe not something that you should always do all the time or anything like that. But I think using these sorts of units periodically can kind of help give you some perspective on how you like to play the game, how certain things work well for you where other things might not, and things like that. So, yeah, experimentation I think is always a good thing. Not every single game that we play is, for any real stakes of any kind, and even most tournaments, honestly, are not very high stakes affairs. Um, so yeah, give give units a shot that you might not look at otherwise, and you might surprise yourself sometimes, or maybe just affirm what you already think, and that's cool too. But then you'll know, you'll have some firsthand experience. But with that, I've been Devin.
And Trevor.
And Ian, and that's the meta.